Welcome to Week Old Beans episode 21. I'm back. This is R. here with my host Fowler. Introduce yourself, Fowler. Even though I just introduced you for you.
You always say to introduce yourself after you've already introduced me.
Yeah, because I want to hear it from the
unless
man.
You have dementia.
I want to hear it from the. Listen,
well, then you got to just pause dramatically.
Look, I'm not
dramatically. And
look,
let me say
I'm not Joe Biden. You don't got to worry about that, okay? Just tell people who you are and stop fucking lollygagging. Jesus, we don't have all day.
I am the host, Fowler.
You're not the host. You're the co-host.
I am the host with the most, Fowler.
All right, host with the most. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people what we're going to be talking about today? Because we got a lot. Well, two things, but a lot.
Mainly this week's news has been a continuation of the speakership battle and the Israel-Palestine crisis. So we're just going to go into more detail about what's occurred since the last time we talked about it.
Yeah. So when it comes to the speakership, and it's all very weird. It's all been very disjointed. So the speakership battle, as you guys know, Kevin McCarthy was booted by your boy Matt Gaetz a couple weeks ago, and the House GOP, which is the majority, has been trying to find a replacement. Now, at first they nominated Steve Scalise, who, if you guys remember, he was just diagnosed with blood cancer a couple months ago, and so he's actually been off Capitol Hill, from what I understand, receiving treatment from that. Treatment for that, I'm sorry. And he was nominated, from what I remember, and then he announced he was stepping down from the role. He was not gonna actually accept the nomination. So there was a lot of hope at first because Steve Scalise is problematic, but he is definitely the less problematic, GOP. He's a moderate, right, Fowler?
He's not a Trumper. He's still pretty far right, but he's not like a Matt Gaetz or a Lauren Boebert.
Yeah. He did not get a hand job at a Beetlejuice performance. Which puts
that was the best thing Boebert ever did. I support her for
that. In front of children. This is the same Boebert that complained about like transgender, LGBTQIA, ABCDEFG people, and she's over here getting a handy at a fucking children's performance of Beetlejuice.
And also Jim Jordan ran for speaker and was also pushed out like Scalise because he couldn't get the votes. Jim Jordan is a far more dangerous figure. He is a hardcore Trumper. He was an election denier. He's just overall like pretty bad news. And if he had been elected, that would have sort of I think that would have basically been like Matt Gaetz getting everything that he wanted.
Yes, and
like
as of
it would have been him. It would have been him like literally pushing out a political moderate in order to get like one of the most radical people in the entirety of the Congress to be the guy.
Yes, so as of yesterday, Jim Jordan, crazy pants, his speakership bid ended. He did not did not survive the I think a second round of voting that happened. So this is the third vote that has failed on the House floor. Effectively, this has paralyzed the House of Representatives because they don't have a speaker, and there's a deadline coming up in November. The deadline that Kevin McCarthy, when he agreed to extend the government being open, he extended that deadline to November, and which is why they ousted him in the first place, because he compromised with Democrats. This is all happening while.
To be fair, specifically, McCarthy had a lot of problems. Like McCarthy, the narrative is the radical Republicans pushed McCarthy out of power, and the majority of the people who pushed him out of power were. But McCarthy also failed. Like moderates also betrayed McCarthy. Like the coalition that broke him was the radical Republicans, the radical or the moderate Republicans, the radical Republicans and the Democrats. Like he was not able to keep anyone happy. Every single person, every single faction in the House, at least one or two people from that faction abandoned McCarthy. So he was a particularly weak and ineffectual speaker, even for like a modern Republican.
Yeah, he didn't have that razzle dazzle that other Republican speakers have had in the past. Um, so, I mean, they attempted to expand the powers of the interim House Speaker Patrick McHenry, who was a moderate. Apparently, that's been scrapped. That was the last piece of news that I read about it uh, a couple days ago, and um, so yeah, so this is just like this is just a shit show for the Republican Party. I mean, you have all this happening when there's a crisis in the Middle East, obviously with the Israel and Palestine situation, and in Ukraine as well. Because don't forget, guys, this shit in Ukraine is still going on. Putin's still wilding out over there. Um, and there's been some funding that's needed to get to both of those conflicts that just has not been able to really pass. Biden has kind of been handling it while Congress sucks their own cock uh, with this bullshit. Uh, all in all, optically, it's terrible for the Republican Party. Now, here's my question, Fowler, because I was thinking about this the other day. It's terrible for the GOP, but I have some worries, and my worry mostly is the fact that, like, the Democratic Party has to stop Donald Trump, but the moderate Republicans also have to stop Donald Trump. And part of me wonders if Matt Gaetz sort of throwing the House GOP into disarray is an attempt at weakening the Republican Party, which is comprised mostly of moderates. I mean, the MAGA Republicans are not the majority of the Republican Party. It's mostly comprised of spineless, uh, you know, spineless Republicans who will back Trump to get themselves nominations in their home districts, but secretly don't actually believe in anything he says. I mean, they don't. The Republican Party doesn't really have principles, so a lot of the moderate Republicans who rode Trump's coattails and then peeled off after January 6th because they realized what a shit sandwich they were going to be eating the next day. Um, they're the majority. So part of me wonders if this was more of a long term strategy from Gates, because he's not stupid, as we've seen, to weaken the moderate Republicans and really just the Republican Party in general, so that if Trump does get into office, the last line of defense against his tyranny, which would be Congress, won't be able to effectively govern and effectively stop him.
I don't know if I buy that. Gates was forced into his position because McCarthy basically said he was going to expel Gates. So Gates eliminating McCarthy was very much a self-preservation tactic, and I'm not fully convinced that he wanted it. I think he was placed in a position where McCarthy threatened him with expulsion, and he had no choice but to pull the trigger on McCarthy.
So you think this?
The Republicans do, I think, like the fascist takeover, I think it benefits them to have the House. I don't think anyone benefits, radical Republicans or not, from the complete chaos. Because not only does it mean they can't pass any bills or respond to any of the crises, it also means that it makes them look incredibly weak and ineffectual in a way that I think doesn't benefit them. Like the headlines are not like, I supported or I thought tactically the Gates's strategy was like not a terrible one. Like I think those sort of pressure tactics can be extremely effective, but I think I don't think he was fully prepared, and I don't think I was fully prepared for just how toxic the situation would be. It wouldn't just be like McCarthy's pushed out and like, okay, now they need a new speaker, but it was like the Republicans can't find a leader and they're like completely crippled.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is like, it's just kind of a clusterfuck, and I guess it can only aid Democrats going forward, but we'll have to see about that, because I mean, both Fowler and I, before we started this episode, we were talking about how we both don't really have much to say about this topic because it is just a clusterfuck, and that's really the only way you can actually describe it. But um, like Jim Jordan was, he was a. I'm saying this not in a positive way. I'm saying this in terms of there was going to be an outcome. He was a, he's name brand, but I can't think of anybody that would take his place, or that's gonna take the speakership right now. I mean, um, especially like I don't know what politician would want to put themselves in the position for vying for it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the McCarthy basically bent over backwards for everyone in order to try and like hold power, and he completely failed. He was abandoned by all the members of the Republican Party, or all factions, I should say. So I think, I don't know, like I think that
Toxic ass position. Like that's it's like a poison seat in a fucking video game. You don't want to sit in it, or you'll get like -15 damage. That's what the speakership feels like now. Evil
I'm
chair.
not nerdy enough to understand that reference.
Did you say you're not horny enough to understand that reference?
Nerdy enough.
Oh, I thought you said horny. I was about to say I mean, we can put something else in that chair if you want, but that was that was not a reference to a specific video game. Don't act like you don't game, Fowler. Over here trying to be like, oh, I'm a high intellectual. I don't play D&D. Yes, you do.
I do not play D&D.
Fowler plays D&D. Don't believe anything he says. He is a liar, pathological liar. We've seen it on this show. He plays D&D, and he likes to pretend that he is a woman in D&D with huge tits, that he fondles himself. That is what he does when he plays D&D. I've seen it myself.
Ardot, I think you should run for Congress as a Republican. You have all the skills: sociopathy, lying, slandering your opponents unjustly. You could be the Republican primary nominee.
Well, I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm hesitant to ever consider running for office because, as I've told Fowler before, if we were in the 1700s, I would be that congressman that would be dueling people, and then getting shot multiple times.
Well, technically, in the 1700s, if you were in the 1700s, you would just like not have rights.
Yeah, this is a hypothetical, you cunt. All right, I know that. For those listening, Fowler is alluding to the fact that I am a non-white individual. I am not white. White. I'm trying to pronounce it like Stewie does from Family Guy. White. I am mocha colored. I'm living the vida mocha, as the song goes. So if I were in the 1700s, I would not. I would be not having the best time. Even though I have a fixation with 1700s and 18th century history. I could manage though. I would steal horses from slave owners and fucking I would be the worst slave. I would not be a good slave. I would be diabolical.
We're going to see, I think a lot of what's happening right now is the breakdown of like the Republican Party has all these norms about like gentlemen's agreements about the way the government should work, and we're really seeing the breakdown of that stuff where like in an earlier time period, like, okay, we need to elect the speaker, so compromises need to be made and things like that, but like we're living in a time period where like people like Matt Gaetz are like, fuck your compromises, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And it's spread to the rest of the party of like, moderates and radicals who in an earlier time would be willing to negotiate, refusing to negotiate because that's been normalized in a way that's crippling the government.
Yeah, it's not good. All in all, this will have a ripple effect, I think, and it's going to be interesting how the voters respond in 2020. That's the next House race, right? 2024.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting how the voters respond in 2024 to the GOP. Could this give Trump a boost? Because could this make Republican voters see Matt Gaetz as their guy and see Matt Gaetz as somebody that actually is going to get shit done in Congress? I mean, he's not really gotten shit done, but he's a ballsy motherfucker, and that is respectable when it comes to politics.
Well, the interesting thing is there was, I don't know if this has changed, but about a week ago there was polling in which I think it was 52% of Republicans agreed with ousting McCarthy. So that's a majority, but it's an incredibly slim one.
Yeah, it's about 50-50. It'll be interesting to see how this affects the House races. It's just really a shame. Well, maybe not a shame, but I think to Matt Gaetz's disadvantage, the other radical Republicans are, as a wise man once said, not the sharpest tools in the shed. One of them likes screaming about Jewish space lasers, and the other likes giving men hand jobs and Beetlejuice fucking concerts.
It will cut down on your effectiveness to be a complete moron, I will say. Like that's not necessarily the place you want to be.
Yeah. So I mean, and then the other ones that could have been effective were taken out. Madison Cawthorn is one of those. The other radical Republicans who could have posed a pretty significant threat were taken out. I mean, I think Madison Cawthorn, of all the radical Republicans besides Gaetz, he would have been probably an issue had he did he ever actually win his office, or did he get voted out? I can't remember.
Office initially, and then he was later voted out.
Okay. He only served like one term, right?
Yeah, he accused he claimed that the Republicans have, in his own words, drug-fueled orgies, and then shortly after he said that,
sounds like a
lot
fun
of
time.
stuff was leaked about him that did not frame him particularly positively.
Yeah. So I guess we're gonna slide on from the speakership. This might be a little bit of a shorter episode, which is fine. We're gonna slide on from the speakership and talk about what's really been dominating the news the past 2 weeks, which is the conflict in Israel, and the Gaza Strip.
Remind me, Ardot, where we were, because I don't remember. Do you remember where we were in the timeline the last time we talked about it?
So the hospital had not been bombed. This was early on, so we were right around the 2 or 3 day mark of the conflict. So this was right around when hostages were being taken, people were paragliding, the rockets were being launched. This was before the hospital bombing. This was before the if we want to talk about domestic stuff, the stabbing of that 6-year-old boy, the Palestinian boy that was stabbed by his landlord a couple days ago.
Did the Israelis start the invasion, or were they still?
They were about to start the invasion.
Organizing it.
They were still organizing it.
Okay. Well, maybe we should start on the invasion and move forward from that then.
Well, I mean, the invasion is not really much to talk about. They invaded Palestine. I mean, they ordered the evacuation.
But that is also unprecedented. I can't remember the last time that they invaded. That is a huge deal. The Israelis are invading. Not only are they invading, but they're forcing an evacuation of, I think, about 1 million people from northern Palestine.
Or actually, hang on. I'm sorry. So they have yet to officially invade, but they were amassing massive amounts of ground troops for an invasion. I forgot to say, it's why they ordered that evacuation. So when we stopped talking about it, they were ordering the evacuation of the 2 million people from northern Gaza. That's where we stopped at. And throughout the evacuation order, a hospital has been bombed. Evacuee buses have been bombed, and so the official full scale ground invasion has yet to happen. But it will in the next couple of days once I think once they try to clear out as many people as they possibly can.
And that stuff is completely unprecedented. Like the typical response is the IDF will bomb Palestine or they will cut off their food and electricity and water, which they are doing right now. But like actually invading Gaza is like an insane thing to do. And because of like they gave 24 hours for the Palestinians to escape, which is not nearly enough time for anyone to escape. And then not only that, but the IDF has been going crazy and they've blown up like evacuation buses. So they're going to create it. They've created a situation where a lot of Palestinians are not going to flee. They're going to hunker down in northern Gaza. And
yes, which Hamas has been calling for.
Casualties.
Hamas has been calling for Palestinians to remain in the Gaza Strip. They have been calling for Palestinians to ignore the evacuation order and stay put. So I think we talked about this last podcast, but I'll reiterate to those listening, and I'm going to say this very candidly. I am not a fan of the way that the Israel-Palestine conflict is framed narratively. I don't think that it allows for a lot of honesty and a lot of reality, which I'm very big on because I think a lot of times you can ignore the reality of a situation and then you're going to be left disappointed. The reality of this conflict, and I think this has been the reality, and it's an unfortunate reality, and it's one that I am not condoning the behavior of, say, the IDF. I think in large part the IDF and Netanyahu and the Israeli government, they are the ones who are primarily responsible for this conflict and have been throughout the past 40 years, as well as international Western powers that have enabled Israel and the IDF to do what they've been doing to Palestinians. But I will not. But I'm also not going to sit here and create a fantasy about what the outcome of this conflict most likely will be, and about the intentions of Hamas, which I think is, which I think a lot of people on the left, especially on the online left, they have a tendency to sort of mythologize Hamas and Palestine in a way that is not productive. And what I mean by that is that Hamas has made it very clear that they will not settle for anything less than a full-scale takeover of Israel. They want, from sea to shine and from sea to sea. I think, what's the phrase? It's like from all, we want to reach
the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea, retake all of the land that was lost from the Palestinians. Hamas has made it very clear that they will not settle for anything less than that. That is their goal. And Hamas is the representing body of Palestine. Hamas has all the guns. Hamas has all of the rocket launchers. They have all of the weapons. They have all of the ammo. They have all of the tactical.
Do you mean Israel?
No, I'm saying within
Israel? I think you misspoke.
Within Palestine. Within Palestine,
okay,
Hamas within Palestine. Hamas is the dominating military and political force. The Palestinian people, I mean, their will matters. What they want matters, but the ones who enact that will are Hamas. And Hamas's intentions, I can't sit here and say whether or not a majority of the Palestinian people, the people that are being bombed by Israel, the ones that are suffering the most from Israel's assaults, I can't speak to what they want, but I know for a fact that what Hamas wants is not peace. And I know for a fact that what Israel wants, and Israel has also been very clear about what their intentions are towards this conflict, it is a total annihilation of the Palestinian people. I mean, they also are not going to settle. They're also not going to negotiate, and this is a real situation of like when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. This conflict. Because neither side is going to budge. And historically, the way that goes is that the side with the most guns wins. And in this case, it's Israel because we're fucking giving them billions of dollars in aid, and they also just they just have more guns because they're the sort of dominating state, And so I think it's just it's a very somber situation. It's almost like you're watching a car crash happen. That's how I feel about this conflict. Like it's like you're watching a car crash happen on the side of the road and you can't do anything about it. You're kind of just stuck. And every side is screaming at the top of their lungs about who's right and who's wrong. But you see that car coming. And
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
it's definitely been a very polarizing topic, and it's one that has caused people to be very tribalistic. The mainstream media and a lot of the older people are very pro-Israel, and a lot of younger people are pro-Palestine, and then some crazy online people are pro-Hamas,
yeah.
including very prominent people like Hassan's mod Frogan.
Yeah, a
And
lot of
Hassan is
leftists
like
on
the
let,
biggest
let me let
content.
me go ahead and say because we actually were going to discuss this on the last episode, but we didn't. There are a lot of people online who are just blatantly pro Hamas, which is also not good. That is also bad. Hamas is bad. Hamas are not the good guys here. The Palestinian people that want freedom, that want to not live under, not live in an apartheid state, they are the victims in this. Hamas are not victims in this. And there is a deliberate, oftentimes, there's a very deliberate merging of the two. A very deliberate merging of the two that happens that left wing people do, and that also the mainstream media does as well. The mainstream pro Israel media, because they want you to equate Hamas with with Palestinian civilians. Um, you know, so that they can further justify their brutalization of Palestinian civilians.
Yeah.
So
No, that's definitely true.
Um, so I guess, did you want to run through the sequence of events, or do you want to just talk more broadly? Because I mean, the hospital bombing, that was really what dominated the news the past week, and um, at first it appeared that Israel had struck the hospital, killed about 500 people, probably more. I've not really checked the official numbers. Let me actually look that up real quick. And Fowler, do you want to continue telling the people what happened?
Yeah. So a hospital, when the Israelis counterattacked Hamas, they bomb. There was a hospital bombing. I think it was 500 people died, and it was a Palestinian hospital. And so there was a lot of news coverage about it, in which basically people were arguing that
Let me interrupt you real
it
quick,
was
Fowler.
probably Israel.
Let me interrupt you real quick, Fowler, because I want to make sure that we also get this correct. So, this is another problem with this conflict. There is a fuck ton of misinformation coming out. The U.S. intelligence community has been trying to gather information. So I'm reading right now that the death toll from that hospital bombing, depending on what media source you look at, could be as low as 50 and as high as 500.
Hmm.
The 500 number was given by Hamas. But there are other numbers that say, but Israel is saying 50. The U.S. official death toll is in between 100 and 300. So kind of right in the middle there.
The conflict is also very problematic in terms of covering it, because the IDF and Hamas are both chronic liars, and they both have biases, are like narratives they're trying to push. So it can be very difficult. And that's why I think a lot of progressive outlets were very like skeptical of it being Hamas initially, of the hospital bombing, because
the IDF lies.
Israel made a lot of the IDF made contradictory statements, and they said that they were willing to bomb the hospital or bomb hospitals before like the hospital was bombed, and they also kind of changed their story a couple times. So it was very much a situation of it was very much a situation where a lot of people were leaning towards the IDF having essentially fabricated it in order to like continue forward essentially.
Yeah.
But I think the evidence is now that the attack was done by Hamas, that, or not Hamas, but another Palestinian jihadist group, that they essentially were trying to fire it off, and then they screwed up and they ended up hitting their own hospital basically.
Yeah. Yeah. There were a couple weapons experts that told CNN that the Al Jazeera video that appeared to show a rocket burning out in the sky before crashing in the hospital grounds. So most likely a malfunction from a rocket that was fired by Hamas or another jihadist group.
Yeah.
So it essentially was launched and then malfunctioned and then came back down on top of the hospital. All of this days after a media firestorm, was emerging because of this bombing. So, it's a really hard thing to cover. And I agree, Fowler, like you said, that it's made people very tribalistic in ways that, I've really never seen before. Like, it's actually really astonishing. I've never seen it before. I mean, the Ukrainian war was one sided. Like, if you were pro Russia, like you were essentially like, unless you were fucking tanky, uh, being pro Russia was not really socially acceptable on the mainstream or on the online left. Um, there were some bold, brave folks that tried, and by God, did they fucking try? But it didn't. They came in fucking with their hammer and sickle, being like, "Look, I'm gonna defend Putin like my life depends on it," and that did not work out. But you know, what I take away from this is, like the takeaway from this is that imperialism probably not the best. That's the most. That's the takeaway from this conflict. That the creation of the Israeli state from the beginning was always going to lead to this moment.
Mm.
Like it was like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
I think it's a more complicated situation because of the fact like Ukraine is a little farther away and a little bit more remote, whereas like like Israel is our closest Middle Eastern ally. So I think it was sort of a
Right
situation
now, it's our fucking
where
only Middle Eastern ally at this point.
well, we have some alliances
We have the
like the
Saudis, but the
Egyptians
Saudis are
and
not.
Saudi Arabia, but
That Saudis fucking did 9/11, but we give them oil, or they give us a fuck ton of oil, so we were just like, oh. I
well,
wouldn't say the
they give
Saudis
us
are.
oil, but
Yeah, yeah.
we pay them a good amount of money to stay on our side, and when it comes to certain things,
Except
and
for
we
9/11,
prop
except
up
for
the
during
Saudi
9/11,
monarchy.
except for during 9/11, and except for when they
Yeah,
killed
but
it.
that wasn't the official.
Except for when they killed that journalist too.
That wasn't.
I'm kidding. I
Well,
agree with you.
they're definitely a vicious regime, but we do pay them like a fairly large amount of money as a way of trying to keep them, like keep our alliances. But I think it's just like the killings were so public. Like I feel like I don't know. There's just so much coverage of um, the killings in a way that wasn't really the case um, with others.
Are you saying the
Like there
killings?
were videos of there were videos of people like being executed in a way that like I don't think the conflict of Russia like had necessarily.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you there.
Like, I think it was a way more like media loud thing that happened.
Yes. Also, Russia had nukes, so or Russia has nukes. I think Israel has nukes as well, but they're not going to use nukes in Palestine. Uh, um,
Yeah.
so the fighting, I feel like, is because like there is not that nuclear threat. I feel like the stakes are a lot. This is going to sound kind of fucked up, but the stakes are a little bit lower because there isn't that nuclear element. Therefore, the tribalization and the fighting is a lot more vicious and a lot less calculated. Uh, the media response at least is a lot less calculated and a lot more tribalistic because there isn't
Yeah,
the
I would agree.
the literal threat of nuclear Armageddon. Like with this conflict, Hamas does not have a nuke, and Israel has nukes, but they're not going to fucking use them in the West Bank. That's insane. Iran has nukes, but why? I
Yeah.
don't know. Iran is not. I don't know. Iran has said they're going to get involved, but like I don't really like. They can say that, but like you know, they say that about literally everything, and they don't ever get involved. So, and I don't know if Jordan has nukes either.
To see. I don't think so.
Um,
It just goes to show like why it's so important to try and stay out of echo chambers. I mean, it's kind of impossible now, but like um people are just living in completely different realities about the Israeli conflict.
yeah, it is like there's a lot of emotionality, and I understand. I'm not impugning those who feel an emotional and a strong investment about this conflict, but I think you just have to be really careful about what you consume, where you consume it, and who you consume it from. Because I think you can get stuck in an echo chamber, and I think, you know, we live in the age of party politics and identitarian politics, and where, like we're very, very polarized. We're a very polarized country. The West in general is very polarized, but the United States is so fucking polarized now. Um, and you can't go back in time and change history. I think that's, a really important thing to think about. You can't go back in time and change history. Israel's not going anywhere, Like, you can have this dream of from river to sea if you're like a left wing, pro Palestinian person, but it ain't gonna happen. Israel's not going anywhere. Um, there has to be kind of this radical acceptance of the situation as it exists. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because it feels really good to be a rebel. It feels really good to stick up for the underdog, which Palestine definitely is the underdog. Do not view this as me excusing the IDF, because Palestine is most definitely the fucking underdog here, and Hamas exists because of Israel's inability to seek peaceful resolution and their inability to respect the Palestinian people. So the fault is Israel's at the end of the fucking day. If we are going to place blame, it's Israel and the fucking UK. So Rishi Sunak needs to get his ass down there and start talking. Uh, um, but there also has to be a radical acceptance of like the reality, and I think that can't happen with the existence of Hamas, and that also can't happen with the existence of probably fucking Netanyahu. Like or like the current like Israeli governmental body, because they are just only going
Yeah.
to it's like a fucking parasitic relationship. Honest to God, Hamas and Israel, they have like a very symbiotic, parasitic relationship where they kind of benefit each other. In their existence benefits each other's
To
ultimate
be
cause.
clear, we're talking about the far right fear mongering about each other.
Yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
talking about, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah, no, like, but what I mean by that is like I think as we've talked about on the last episode, Hamas's existence gives Israel a justification for them to commit brutality, and the brutality that is committed against them by Israel gives Hamas a justification to retaliate, and it just goes back and forth.
And certainly the invasion is not going to make anything better.
Yeah. No, not at all. It's going to further push the Palestinian people into desperation. If it hasn't already, because they've cut off all their fucking food and water supply. And getting humanitarian aid into a region like that is really, really difficult.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Really hard to get good humanity because they're under a blockade too from the water. So it's just all in all, it's just a devastatingly bad situation.
Yeah, hopefully there is some return to sanity, but we won't really know until more time has passed what's going down and how it feels and all that basically.
Yes, and we got to keep in the loop when it comes to the misinformation. If you are following this conflict, just be very careful about what you read and take everything you read with a grain of salt. Um, and we're going to be following this conflict as it continues as closely as possible. Do you have anything? We're at the 42-minute mark. Do you have anything you want to say, Fowler, before we sign out?
I don't have much to say. What do you have to say?
I really don't have much to say. It's just all very sad. I mean, I'm like, it's a very fucking depressing topic. It feels like the world's gone mad between this and the fucking GOP, like having like like when you die and then you shit your pants. Like that's essentially what's happening in the fucking House of Representatives right now. Having that post-death shit.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
When it rains, it pours, I guess.
And then with all this going on, so yeah, you want to? How about you sign us out, Fowler? You never do. I'm always the one that signs us out. You sign us out.
Thank you for listening. Feel free to continue listening if you like our content, and we will see you in the next video.